Now we're going to look at gases in the particle model. Here I've drawn a completely sealed container. It's basically a cube or a square. And you notice all these black specks in the middle. Those are my gas particles. And notice how there's lots and lots of space in between the gas particles. And that is what we see in nature, where we notice that gases are compressible. And the only way they can do that, if everything is made of particles, is if there's gaps, lots of gaps in between, where if I was to try and squish the container, there are spaces in between that those particles can move into, such that the whole shape can get smaller. The other thing about gases is they have very little attraction between each particle. And so because of that, they can fly apart. Okay? And now, it does look a bit like cheese right now, but you can imagine these particles are flying around like a big, very violent meteor shower or comets and pinball machine, just all bouncing around very furiously. And so we know another property about gases is they tend to diffuse and they mix into the container that they're in. And this happens because they have so much movement, so much freedom of movement, they can move anywhere, and they tend to bump into each other, they bump into the containers of the walls, and gradually, if you leave them long enough, they'll spread out evenly. If I had another gas that I introduced into this container, let's say if I got some blue ones, or let me say red ones, those gas particles would just move freely throughout the container, maybe bump into some other particles along the way, but eventually they would also move out such that they are evenly distributed across the container. That's what gases do. They have very little attraction force between them, and they have lots of space between the particles, so that allows it to be compressed. And that's it. That's the essentials of the particle model. And now for students in my class, we're going to go through some practice problems to use these models to try and explain basic things that happen in an everyday basis.